You know what time it is. Get into it, yes. Hi, lovelies, hi. We're back with another installment of Storytime with Chris. You don't always have to watch these videos when they go live. You're more than welcome to watch them in your downtime, nap time, max, relax, and chillaxing time, between time, mean time, scheme time, study time, break time, any time that you want to hear a highly animated voice bring you wonderful stories of science fiction, fantasy, magic, adventure, and many, many more in between. Hi, y'all. It's a beautiful Monday, and I started off the day right. Lots of laughter, lots of smiles, and a good amount of self-reflection. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and continue our reading of The Return to the 100-Acre Wood. But I am going to switch up the music because it's a bit more ethereal than what I would prefer for this type of story. So I'm gonna find another means to take you there, to another world beyond the pages of this world. Vocals. All right, let's see. Really? This is why I need to make a playlist. I have a lot of playlists, but I need to make a playlist specifically for story time. Na 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 na. Nee 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 nee. Okay, now we cook it with grease. Now I'm seeing stuff I can utilize. Let's do it. Yes. Yes. Perfect. All right. Chapter 2, in which Owl does a crossword and a spelling bee is held. Since Christopher Robin went away, Piglet had been staying at Pooh's house because Owl was staying at Piglet's because, oh well, it would take too long to explain. A few days after Christopher Robin's return, Pooh and Piglet were sitting together over breakfast at that pleasant time of the day when you know that there is much to be done, but not quite yet. Pooh had completed his stoutness exercises, 2 push-ups, 2 pull-ups, and a lie-down, and Piglet had written in his diary, got up, had breakfast, wrote this in diary, and was wondering how he managed to fit it all in when Pooh said, I wonder where Christopher Robin has been.
I don't know, said Piglet, who had been wondering too. But he's a bit grand, isn't he, Pooh? Since he came back and he seems a bit more.
That's it exactly, said Pooh. A bit more, but not too much. Piglet closed his diary. But he's still Christopher Robin. I wish I knew where he'd been, continued Pooh. Do you think Owl would know?
He might do, Pooh, which would be good. And if he didn't, he might make something up, and that'd be good too. Let's go and ask him.
On this particular morning, Owl had settled in his comfiest chair and folded the Ornithological Times so that the bit with his crossword puzzle was on top. On a low table next to him was a cup of tea, and he was wearing the old shawl that had belonged to Uncle Robert. It smelled a bit, but helped him to concentrate. The first clue was one across. It read, Big Bird. 3 letters. Owl scratched behind his ear with his quill pen. However, when he wrote down Eggle on a piece of scrap paper to see how it looked rather odd. When he held it up to the mirror, it looked even odder. But try as he might, he could not squeeze ostrich or even hork with 3 letters. Bother, muttered Owl and stuck his quill through the newspaper.
It's in the name.
It's in his name. At just that moment, Pooh and Piglet arrived at the door and tugged at the handkerchief with a knot in it, which served as a bell pull. Piglet cleared his throat.
We want to know, Owl, whether you know where Christopher Robin has been, and whether he will be going there again and when.
The words came out in such a rush that Piglet blinked several times and steadied himself on the low table.
"He has been on safari," said Owl impressively.
"What does that mean?" Pooh asked.
"It means that he's been so far and no farther. And now if you would be so kind as to close the door behind you when you leave."
"Why don't you come with us to Christopher Robin's house," said Piglet, "and we can ask him ourselves."
"Oh, all right," said Owl, thinking that Christopher Robin would surely know that Big Bird, 3 letters, would be. It was a perfect summer day, and the forest was sparkling. The cobwebs on the bracken were strung with seed pearls of dew, and the trees were competing as to which was wearing the biggest green. Christopher Robin was polishing his bicycle when the others arrived. "Come indoors, Pooh and Piglet and Owl," said Christopher Robin, "because I have something to show you all, and it's an indoor sort of thing." When Christopher Robin had finished wiping the polish off his fingers and onto his handkerchief and off his handkerchief and back onto his fingers, he handed Owl a very large book that was wrapped in tissue paper. "I won this at school," he said, "for throwing the cricket ball more than 50 yards. Pooh and Piglet glanced at each other.
"You were at school!" cried Piglet in excitement. "I thought you were."
Meanwhile, Owl was unwrapping the book. "It's a thesaurus," said Christopher Robin.
"Is that like a heffalump?" asked Piglet. Oh, dearie, dearie me."
"It's a book of words. You look up one word and it tells you lots of others which mean the same thing."
"Why can't you use the word you had in the first place?" asked Piglet.
"I don't know," said Christopher Robin. "Why don't we look up something and see?" So Pooh looked up owl, and the book said, "Sage, hooter, bird of ill omen."
"Isn't sage a kind of herb?" said Pooh.
"It means someone who's wise," said Christopher Robin.
"Indeed," said Owl, fluffing out his feathers, and then he thought for a while and said, "Indeed," again, and "Indeed, and saying 3 times made it seem as though Owl was having a sage and wise and hooterish kind of thought.
"The animals around here
are not well educated, Christopher Robin. Not like you and I."
"You and me," said Christopher Robin.
"Yes," said Owl, "both of us, just so. I expect the thesaurus will help me with my crossword puzzle. I don't suppose you could have a look at one across."
"Crossword puzzles," cried Christopher Robin in delight. "We were doing them at school."
"What else did you do at school, Christopher Robin?" asked Pooh. "And did you have 11s there?"
"Well, let me see now," said Christopher Robin, for to tell the truth, school already seemed a long time ago. It was noisy, and the geography teacher only had one eye, and it smelled a bit of floor polish. The school, I mean, not the eye. There was math and cricket and a spelling bee.
"A bee?"
asked Pooh. "We could have a spelling bee here," Christopher Robin suggested, "if you would like to, and you, Owl, could be the quizmaster."
"Good idea," said Owl. "It's not the animals' fault they are ignorant."
That night, as they lay in bed, Piglet asked Pooh about the thesaurus.
"It's just a big book, Piglet."
"It's not a great big monster?"
"No, Piglet."
"Not at all like a heffalump?"
"Go to sleep, Piglet."
"And the words aren't very cross, are they, Pooh?"
added Piglet, shivering a little.
"I wonder, can we leave the light on tonight?"
The next day, which was the day of the grand spelling bee, the sky was stormy with white clouds like marshmallows scudding across it. Near the horizon there were some darker ones which looked as if they meant business. In the clearing there was a placard slung between 2 large trees. Owl had made it. It read, "Grand Spelling Bee, all welcome." A few logs had been placed end to end for sitting on, with large ones in front for writing on. Pencils had been sharpened in squares of paper, laid ready with the name of each animal proudly displayed in block capitals. Owl was wearing his pince-nez glasses, which he kept on a chain around his neck, and a tweed waistcoat which had belonged to his Uncle Robert, who had been a credit to the family despite everything. Rabbit and Kangaroo were there, and Piglet and Tigger and Early and Late, and friends and relations, not all of them, but quite enough to be going with, and Henry Rush, the beetle. It looked like it might rain.
"Is everybody ready?"
asked Owl, taking a gold watch out of his waistcoat pocket and putting it to his ear. The watch had stopped many years ago at 3:15, which was a good time to have stopped at. One of the friends and relations sniffed loudly. "Use your handkerchief," said Rabbit.
Haven't got one,
sulked the young relation and sniffed again.
haven't got a name either.
"You must have a name," said Rabbit. "Everybody's got a name. I expect it's Jack." Owl cleared his throat loudly and said again, "Is everyone ready?" Piglet was wondering if they could have a competition for drawing instead of spelling. He could draw a table so that he could see all 4 legs at once, and that's really difficult. And a vase for flowers on top. Pooh said to Piglet, "It's all right," said Piglet. "Spelling is easy once you get it started." Piglet nodded.
Getting started is the worst bit. I expect we'll start soon.
Tigger had drawn zeros and crosses at the top of his piece of paper, and he and Roo were playing. But since both of them wanted to do crosses, the game was turned out rather noisy and confused. "I've won!" cried Tigger and Roo at the same time. There was a dusty smell in the air, and a few heavy spots of rain plopped onto the sheets of paper. A rumble of thunder echoed around the spinney, as if the storm was considering the possibilities. In the sky, a flock of starlings that had been flying west changed their minds, and all at the same time, and veered off to the southeast. Lightning flickered above the larches, and another rumble of thunder stopped behind side drums and became cymbals. This is why I'm slipping, because the cover of this book is a bit slick. Hold on. Okay, that's better.
Oh, said Piglet, why is it doing that? And I wish it wouldn't.
Owl adjusted his pince-nez and glared at the animal so fiercely that one of the youngest hid under a toadstool.
"Ready or not," Owl said, "the first word is fiddlesticks."
There were groans on all sides. "Can you spell it, Owl?" asked Rabbit, and the cry was taken up by most of the other animals.
"Of course. Of course I can," said Owl.
"Then do it," said Rabbit.
"Shan't," said Owl. "The second word is rhododendron."
"I thought there were going to be bees," said Pooh, and Piglet said,
I thought so too. I don't think anybody in the world can spell rhoda thingamajig.
"And why would they want to?" added Pooh.
"And the third word is..."
But the third word wasn't, because just then a large drop of rain landed on the dictionary, and even larger one landed on Owl's spectacles. Within seconds, the forest was a sparkle, with raindrops coming down and raindrops bouncing back up. Christopher Robin jumped onto the tree stump and made an announcement. "Friends, the spelling bee has been cancelled, because spelling is difficult at the best of times and impossible in the rain." At this, the animals cheered loudly. "Why don't you all come back to my house, and we'll toast some muffins and make a huge house of cards?"
"But Christopher Robin," objected Owl.
"It's all right, Owl. When a spelling bee is interrupted by the weather, the prize goes to the quizmaster, which is you." Owl took off his pince-nez, blinked a few times, then wiped the lenses and asked,
"Me?"
"Yes, Owl, you." With which Christopher Robin handed over the prize, which turned out to be a crossword puzzle, with all the answers at the end. Owl was very proud and also suddenly a little thoughtful. Then Christopher Robin, led the animals back to his house. There they had muffins toasted to perfection, and Kanga spread yellow butter on them so that it would melt into the crevices, for those who wanted it, which was everybody. There was jam with whole strawberries in it to go on top, which is bad for me because I'm allergic to strawberries. I'm allergic to strawberries, raspberries, and cranberries. Tough time. When they had eaten all the muffins and drunk cups of tea from china cups with roses around the sides, a pleased-looking owl went up to Christopher Robin.
"Big bird in 3 letters," he said.
"Yes?"
"It's owl, of course."
"Why, so it is," Christopher Robin agreed. After that, the animals settled down and made the biggest house of cards ever seen in the 100-acre wood, with turrets and bridges and a yard of the carriages. When there were no cards left, Tigger bounced onto the middle of it so that it collapsed quite flat. But nobody minded, because by then the storm had passed and the evening sun was peering anxiously over the rim of the hill. The moon was there too, so that everybody knew that it was time to go home to bed. Pooh stayed at Christopher Robin's house that night and watched him have his bath. What he really wanted to see was whether he still wore his blue braces. And yes, he did. but not in the bath. And that is where we will end for today. It's always good to have friends to share games with, or make up your own games, or make up your own spelling bee, or hide and seek contest, or a scavenger hunt, a treasure map. It reminds me of a song. Some people like to dive right in, can you imagine that? And flap about in bathtub gin, can you imagine that? Doggies paddling 20 leagues below might seem real, but we know it's not so. To cook without a recipe, can you imagine that? And heaven knows what lives inside that pot. Some pirates follow treasure maps and wear a silly hat. They search the world for buried gold. They won't grow up, they don't grow old. Can you imagine that? Well, I will leave you all with that, and I will bid you a good afternoon. Bye-bye.